So Europe has been on a roll lately when it comes to cracking down on anti-consumer practices in the video game industry. Not too long ago, we saw Netherlands investigate loot boxes and declare 4 of the 10 games they investigated as breaching their country's gambling laws, particularly the ones that allowed players to cash out in-game items for real money, calling on the publishers to change the games or face fines and sales bans. Then Belgium took it a step further by investigating games like Star Wars Battlefront 2, Overwatch, FIFA 18, and Counter-Strike Global Offensive, and the country declared that all but Battlefront 2 are in violation of gambling regulation, stipulating that publishers must either remove loot boxes outright or face fines and potential jail time. It's also worth noting that the only reason Battlefront 2 managed to get away with it was because they got rid of paid loot boxes before this deliberation. Belgium's ruling is particularly important because it's the first country to declare that cosmetic-only loot boxes, like ones that Overwatch sells, are gambling. What this means is that moving forward, no form of loot boxes are safe, and sooner or later, publishers will be forced to steer away from glorified gambling systems if they don't intend to face legal repercussions, which is only good for consumers. Suffice to say that after the controversy that Battlefront 2 caused, the whole European Union is now on high alert and investigating all facets of the gaming industry to ensure that it's upholding good consumer practices. But it isn't just the issue of loot boxes that Europe is cracking down on. More recently, we learned that Norway is going after various game publishers for their refund and order cancellation policies. The following information comes directly from the Norwegian Consumer Council, or the NCC, who recently published a press release outlining complaints made against 4 particular companies: Valve, EA, Sony, and Nintendo. More specifically, their complaints were directed at Valve's Steam service, EA's Origin service, Sony's PlayStation Store service, and Nintendo's eShop service. Norway found that all 4 of these services failed to allow or inform consumers regarding their right of withdrawal, a directive under the European Union that broadly stipulates that customers must be allowed to cancel or refund a purchase from the moment a purchase is made until 14 days after they have received the purchased product. Here's the bottom line of the NCC's findings as stated in their press release. Steam, owned by Valve Corporation, Origin, owned by Electronic Arts, and PlayStation Store, owned by Sony Interactive Entertainment, are in breach of the right of withdrawal by not getting express consent from the consumer and his acknowledgement that he thereby loses his right of withdrawal. Nintendo eShop, owned by Nintendo, is in breach of the right of withdrawal by not accepting cancellations of pre-orders before the launch date. Let's begin by talking about Nintendo. I don't really make too many purchases via the eShop, as I buy most of my games in physical form, so I actually didn't know much about the eShop's pre-order cancellation or refund policies. But going to Nintendo's official support website, there is a segment detailing the cancellation policy for digital purchases made from Nintendo, and it states quite clearly that, quote, all sales including pre-purchases are final. In other words, if you pre-order a game and want to cancel, you can't do that. If you buy a game, there are no options to return the product and get your money back. As for services like Steam, Origin, and PlayStation Store, they all do offer various refund options. With Steam, you can cancel pre-orders anytime, and after a software is released, as long as a refund is requested within 14 days and you have put less than 2 hours of playtime into a game, you can return your purchase and get your money back. With Origin, you can cancel pre-orders anytime, and you can get a refund as long as it's within 24 hours after you first launch the game, within 7 days from purchase if you haven't launched the game, and within 7 days of release date if you pre-ordered and haven't launched the game. Finally, for PlayStation Store, you can cancel pre-orders anytime prior to release, and after release, you can request a refund within 14 days as long as you haven't started downloading or streaming the purchased content. Now that's all well and good, but the problem that Norway highlights for these services is that they don't prompt customers to consent that they're forfeiting their right to refund a product under certain circumstances. So there might be people making digital purchases without knowing that if you play a game for more than 2 hours, if you launch the game, or if you download the game, you can't return the product. Now, I do think it's fair that game companies should be able to deny refunds for someone who has, in a manner of speaking, unwrapped a digital product or used it to a certain extent. Otherwise, you'd see people finishing games within the mandated 14 days refund window before returning them, and game companies would just not make any money. I think the way Steam handles it in particular is very fair. I like that you get to try the game for 2 hours before deciding if you want to return it within the 14 days window. However, I do agree that if you're going to lay out conditions that make consumers exempt from their right of withdrawal, you have to make sure that these conditions are very clearly communicated, understood, and consented. A simple pop-up message outlining everything very clearly with a little checkbox asking users if they understand the refund policy when making a purchase would solve this issue. As for Nintendo, yeah, the fact that their eShop service has 0 options to cancel pre-orders or refund games is complete and utter bullshit, and the company definitely deserves to be called out for it. Apparently, the NCC had previously reached out to Nintendo asking them to comply with the rules and to change their practices, but that seemingly went nowhere. Nintendo apparently tried to justify the way they do things by pointing to, quote, the performance having begun already when the console performs a preloading of the game. But the NCC rightfully retorted by stating, quote, the performance as stated in the Cancellation Act Section 22M cannot be regarded as begun before the game can be used, which is after release date. In other words, preloading a game which cannot be used in that state should not be regarded as owning or playing a game, which is absolutely correct. All in all, I'd say that the Norwegian Consumer Council did their homework and have sensibly pointed out everything that's wrong with the current refund practices of these 4 companies. The complaints are all valid, and the changes they are asking for are, I would say, very fair. In the words of Finn Murstad, Director of Digital Services at the NCC, quote, this is in breach of Norwegian and European consumer contracts legislation and shows a lack of clarity by the 4 powerful gaming platforms. Murstad also dropped a few other quotes that I think apply to not just refund and order cancellation policies, but also anti-consumer practices in the gaming industry as a whole, stating, quote, digital products and services such as digital games for PCs and consoles do not exist in a lawless vacuum. Big gaming providers selling their products online are some of the world's largest entertainment companies. They have to observe laws and rules and honor consumer rights just like everyone else. The digital gaming market is beset with problems surrounding pre-ordering, including unfinished products, copyright protection, and misleading advertising. You should be granted the same consumer rights as everyone else when you buy games. Somebody please give this man a mic to drop. Everything he said is absolutely on point. The problem with the gaming industry right now is that they think they can get away with anything, and they have been for the longest time. But after the Battlefront 2 controversy made known to the world that the gaming industry isn't willing to act responsibly in many aspects, the tables have turned. We are finally beginning to see some semblance of oversight to keep game companies at bay, to let them know that they aren't exempt from laws and regulations, no matter how they might try to skirt their way around them. As I've said before, ideally, I'd love it if the gaming industry could regulate itself. I didn't particularly want the government to kick the doors down. But the gaming industry kept pushing, and here we are. They have no one but themselves to blame this current predicament. They practically asked for this. And you know what? So far, I've been satisfied with how the European Union has been handling things. They are simply laying down the hammer and saying, follow our laws and don't be assholes, which, if you ask me, are perfectly reasonable demands. The coming few months will be interesting. The landscape will shift drastically as more and more countries pursue unsavory practices and as more and more shady games are scrutinized. And I'm hopeful that things will change for the better. These are just one man's thoughts and opinions anyway. I'd love to hear what your take is on all of this in the comments below. With that, I would like to end this news update. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoy my content, consider supporting me on Patreon. It's completely optional, but donating even as little as $1 a month will go a long way in helping maintain this channel. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Yong Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Yong out!